Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ramsey Library Brown Bag series. I'm Gene Hyde. I'm head of special collections and host of the Brown Bags. And today we're really delighted to have Chelsea Augustiniak with us. So Chelsea, it's yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen so y'all can see that. And pull up my presentation here. All right, so today we are talking about career conversations and the idea that career development does not just live in the Career Center, but it is something that everyone on our campus can help with. Just like student success is part of everyone's role on campus, so is career development. So I was going to go ahead and start out with a question that I use when I'm talking to students or doing a classroom presentation. And just wondering, so for those of you who are on the call, if you want to respond with, when you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a vet.
Vet. Awesome. That's a pretty common response. I hear that one often.
Yeah, I thought about being a doctor.
Doctor.
Fascinated with how the body works. Mm-hmm.
My dad was in the Air Force and I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy.
Awesome. Nice.
Which I did not do.
I remember wanting to be a ballerina, and I don't know how I thought that. I did take ballet lessons for a short while, but I was not good at it. So I tend to ask this question of students because I want to emphasize the fact that career development for them is not something new. It's not something that they're just starting in college, and it's not starting just when they visit the Career Center, but this is something that they have been engaged with, whether they knew it or not, from the time they were young. So seeing, what our parents went to go do, what were their jobs, having ideas of what we wanted to be when we grew up, et cetera. So just kind of a fun question to ask. And for some students, they are things that, are maybe they're things that they were interested in a long time ago. And for some of them, maybe they still have the same interest. So oftentimes we talk in the Career Center about the fact that a lot of careers are not linear. So there are some people who go to college, have a major, they work for a long time in one industry, but then they go and do something completely different. And actually, the last number that I heard, as far as the data point goes, for how many jobs one is expected to have in their lifetime, 11.9 on average was the last number that I heard. And so that is a lot. And so for some, there are linear career paths. So I grew up with a friend who wanted to be a pilot from the time he was very young. He then went to Embry-Riddle. He got his pilot's license, and he is now in his mid-30s and flying private jets around the world for wealthy customers. So just kind of a fun thing to think of how our career interests have shifted over time, or if they have. And then one question that I often ask students as well, and it's fun to see the responses from, our first year students all the way up to our seniors who are about to graduate. But if I had to ask you right now, what are 3 of your strengths? How many of you could share at least 1 or 2 of those?
I could, but I think it's cheating because it's kind of my job.
That's true. That's true. So, and y'all don't have to respond, but why I ask this is because a lot of our students, even our seniors, really can't respond to this. And so there's not necessarily anything bad about that, but I asked this question to just show them that there is a lot of reflection work that they're going to need to do in order to prepare for the job search. And, the job hunt, it's competitive. So we have to throw in our applications, so our resumes, our cover letters. In those documents, we really have to talk about what our skills are, what our strengths are, what we have accomplished either academically or in internships and jobs. And so if we can't articulate that, it's going to be very difficult to convince someone to hire us. And so just kind of prompting the students and lighting a fire, I guess, under their seat to show these are some things that you're going to have to think about and then learn to articulate before you start applying for jobs. And so I think for some students, that can be a little scary. And then I really like this question. So what would you do if you could not fail? And I have had students respond with so many answers here. So one student the other day actually said she would just move out of the state because she's lived here a long time. She has always been, I just admit that person. So she's lived here a long time. She's always wanted to do something a little different, move away from family. And so to her, that's what she would do if she could not fail. Other students have said they would write a children's book or publish a children's book. I've had some people say they would try to pursue their education past their undergrad and maybe try to reach for a PhD. And I love this question because it gets students really dreaming. And then I ask as a follow-up, you know, what are the...
on?
Oh, if you've just logged on, go ahead and mute yourself if you could. So trying to get students to see what are the barriers that they are putting up, you know, that may be prohibiting them from reaching that goal. So I know that a lot of times with our students at UNC Asheville, some of them are putting up these barriers, and maybe they are struggling with low self-esteem or low self-confidence as it comes to their career. Maybe it's because of what was modeled to them when they were young. I know that for me, neither of my parents went to college. And so neither of my parents loved what they did for work. My dad worked really hard and my mom was always doing different jobs. And so for me, as I grew up, I thought, oh, well, work is just a place you go to make money. And it's not something you're supposed to enjoy. It's just, you know, putting food on the table. And so that's what was modeled, whereas other students, you know, other things were modeled for them. They had family members who loved what they did. And so trying to get them to see that there are no barriers, but they have to put in the work and set goals for themselves and get the experience in order to set themselves up to reach those goals. And the Career Center is a great place to come and for them to have those conversations. All right. So one thing that I want to highlight is just how the Career Center at UNC Asheville really believes that career development is identity development. And so we have created some modules and classroom activities and presentations that are really around reflection and helping students focus on their strengths, their interests, values, other unique characteristics that they may have, maybe personality preferences, and how knowing all of those pieces of what I call their personal profile can help with decision making. So it's kind of like on a map. So you're going somewhere, you know where your endpoint is, where you're trying to go, but it's hard to get there unless you know where you're starting. And so, you know, again, the more we know about ourselves, I think it can really help us make decisions about what our future steps are. So these are just some examples of some of the exercises and activities that we bring to students in the classroom. So my role as the associate director for career education is to really scale career development and bring career development into the classroom. And so getting students, hopefully as young as as early as their first year on campus, getting them to really engage in this career development process. So we do have a really fun activity called the Wandering Map. And it helps students to make connections between these seemingly unrelated experiences and events that they've had throughout their lives. And then maybe it can help them decide, oh, these are things that are really valuable to me. And so it could help them make decisions moving forward. We have students go through a good experiences exercise where they really reflect on times that they were at their best, and it can help them uncover skills and strengths of theirs. We have a Holland Code exercise that helps them uncover interests and then helps them think of what majors or career paths could be a good fit for them based on those interests. And then reflecting on the past. So as I had said, what was modeled to them as the world of work goes when they were young? What had they seen in the media? And based on what they know and what they have come to know, what do they value in a work environment? So those are just some of the pieces. It used to be that when the Career Center would go to a classroom, we would just do a brief 15-minute, 30-minute presentation on the Career Center services. So, here are the events that we do. Here is what you can come and talk to us about. And now we're just trying to do a deeper dive and get students to really engage in their career development in the classroom. So just a little bit more about the Career Center before we dive into our career conversations topic. But our goal or our vision at the center is really to make sure that every UNCA student is ready for what's next. So all students are starting at very different points in their career development. Some of them may have had jobs in the past. Some of them may have been involved in leadership opportunities in high school and in college. Others are really starting from ground zero. So they may not be prepared. So when we're having conversations with students, it's okay, what have you done before? And then let's help you figure out what that next step could be. So some of the things that we do in order to help students get there is we put on events. So we have our Next Fest event, which are our career fairs, which we have every semester. And then also our internship event, which we host every semester. We do workshops for various groups on campus. And we also have been doing, especially in the world of COVID, we've been doing some virtual info sessions with employers. And so they can come and chat with students about the opportunities that they have. And then we do classroom presentations, and it can be on a variety of topics. So it's not only just the self-reflection topics and understanding one's strengths and interests, but it could be on anything from resume and cover letter writing to interviewing to professionalism, and talking about preparation for grad school. Is grad school a good next step for students? So tons of topics there. And then also we do have Handshake, which all of you and all of our students have access to through OnePort, and that is our jobs and internships database. So students can go in and see what types of opportunities there are. And then also the Career Center we have various resources in there. So there's a lot of information for students as far as how to build a great resume with some sample resumes in there, how to explore, maybe going through different activities and exercises to help them think about what they want to major in. So we do have some excellent resources in Handshake as well. And then we do career coaching on a variety of topics. And then one thing I just wanted to mention that is new this year is the sophomore elevation experience. So just as we have our first year students going through the first year seminars and the 178 courses, we piloted this fall semester and this semester a new collaborative experience between the Career Center and advising. And it's called the Sophomore Elevation Experience. It is an exclusive opportunity we did up to 20 students this semester, 20 sophomores, and it really helps them with their career development and academic development. It talks to them about the importance of gaining experience. They get to here's Lisa. They get to, hear a little bit more about opportunities available to them on campus. And then we also have the Career Center blog, which we've been working on since the pandemic started too. And so I think that's a really excellent resource for people to go and look at cool opportunities. So each week we're posting opportunities that are in Handshake. So it could be cool local internships, local jobs, other experiences. And then we also post some best practices in there. So what we know for our students is the word career can be intimidating. So we have purposely taken that word out of a lot of what we do. So for instance, our career fairs are now called Next Fest, because again, it's always about what's next for the student. And so we're all starting at very different places. So for some students, what's next could be finding their very first job. What's next could be, their third internship. Or it could be life after graduation or grad school. And so we're trying to really normalize the career development process. And that's why it's so important to really start having these conversations with students from the moment they step onto campus. The other thing we know is that students do wait too long to visit the Career Center. And so oftentimes they're coming to us maybe when they're juniors, oftentimes seniors. I see a ton of seniors who say they've never engaged with the Career Center before. And I tell students a lot about my experience. So I have been working in career services now since 2010. However, when I was a student in undergrad, I did not access my career center until I was about a month away from graduation. And it's because my mom made me go there. So when I went to my first appointment, I really recognized what all I had missed out on. So I had heard the word career all those years, and I thought, oh, that's something that I can push off until I'm about to graduate, not knowing that the Career Center really could have helped me get more involved, find internship opportunities, gain more experience, maybe start doing informational interviews with professionals, because I really had no clue what I wanted to do after college. So really trying to get the message of career development to students as early as possible. And we also know that experience is important, and so is reflection. And so oftentimes we have some students who have been really engaged on and off campus. And then we have students who come to us and they are wanting to apply for opportunities after graduation, and they really don't have much at all on their resume as far as internships, undergrad research, jobs. And so it's trying to get the message to students as early as possible that not only is gaining experience important for helping them figure out maybe what they want to do, it can help them expand options, maybe narrow down options. So I like to say that no experience is a bad learning experience. So you're going to be learning no matter what. So you're going to learn, oh yeah, this is actually really confirming what I want to do with my life, or, ooh, this is not what I thought it was. And so I'm going to try to go a different direction. And then reflecting on one's experiences is really important. So storytelling is huge in the application process. And so students have to be able to articulate what it is they're good at, what their strengths are and their accomplishments. And it's really challenging to do that if they haven't reflected, but it's more challenging to do that if they have not had these experiences. Another thing that we know is that students really look up to their professors and staff on campus, and they trust you all. And so they want to have conversations with you. And we know that these conversations are happening. And we know that they talk to you all about career choices, what they want to do with their lives. And we also know that they come and talk to us about it. But again, just the idea that the Career Center, we're not the only department that is engaged in this process of career development with our students. And then another thing that we know is just that we're all contributing to that student development and success, which means that we are all contributing to their professional success. So I want to continue sharing my screen, but I'm going to pull up a document. I'm going to pull up a document that was actually emailed from Lisa Mann, our director, to everyone back in January. I believe it was January 14th. So you all do have this document in your email somewhere because it was sent out to all campus. But this is something that we recently created, and it's because we do know that these conversations about career are happening across campus, and some faculty and staff are more comfortable having these conversations than others. So we thought this could be a document that could help people maybe start those conversations. And of course, knowing that you can refer students to the Career Center whenever you would like as well. So again, it's a partnership. And really one thing that we love to do in the Career Center is just explore ways with you that we can help support what you're already doing. So one thing I want to really highlight with this document and is just the different phases that our students may be in with their career development. So the exploration phase, and we do know that so the exploration phase is not just for first year students. So it says here, students often need help understanding themselves and the world of work. We know that juniors and seniors also need help understanding themselves and the world of work. So some of them may not have had this experience. So it's not that the exploration phase is just for our first and second year students, but really having these discussions with students to figure out what phase they may be in and where they're needing some support. But these are some of the questions that you can ask your students. So what classes have you enjoyed most? And I think one thing is helping students make connections. So it's not just having them say, oh, I really enjoyed my chemistry class, but going a little bit further, what about that did you enjoy? Because this can help them then make connections about things that they may enjoy in the future. So in other opportunities, when have they felt most successful? What do they want life to be like after graduation? I think is an important question. We often ask students, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what job do you want? What's your dream career? But I think one thing, especially with this generation, that's important, and students are wanting to make an impact. So we're not just talking about what job do you want, but it's what impact do you want to make on the world, and who are you and who do you want to become? So it's really, again, more of that identity and their legacy. So asking those questions, I think, can be super helpful. And again, knowing that the word career or the idea of a career could be intimidating, I think this makes those conversations less intimidating. And also just the idea that the 40-year career is no longer a thing. It's, we can think back to our parents or grandparents. Some of them have stayed in the same roles or within the same companies their whole lives. And knowing, again, going back to that data point of 11.9 jobs being the average that people will have in their lifetime, I think can also take some stress away from students. So they know that when they choose a major, their major isn't leading into only one career that they're going to be stuck in the rest of their life. I think that's often why students are really stressed and having anxiety around making decisions, is they think they're going to be pigeonholed into something that then they can't move out of. So these are just some of the questions around the exploration phase that students may be in. And then I really like how this document highlights other ways to explore. So when you're talking to those students, maybe offering that they join a club or a campus organization, volunteer, working on campus. It's actually very interesting when I meet with students and we're looking at their resume. Oftentimes I ask, what else is missing here? So what have you not put on? And a lot of students say, oh, well, I've done a ton of volunteering, but I don't think that's what belongs on a resume. And so just, educating them and letting them know, actually, that's really wonderful experience. It's showing how engaged you've been. Maybe you're helping a certain population. And so it doesn't have to be a paid opportunity that's helping you gain experience and explore the world around you. So, of course, always encouraging them to meet with a career coach as well. And then another phase that they may be going into is the preparing and connecting. So it says the more students examine their experiences, the better prepared they are to tell their story to others. And I had just mentioned, the importance of storytelling. And that's actually one of the classroom presentations that we do often, is talking to students about storytelling and getting them to really reflect on some of their experiences where they were at their best or where they were demonstrating their excellent teamwork skills or problem solving skills, and then practicing really telling stories about that and having others see what they had accomplished. So here are some questions that could be helpful when you're talking to students about the preparing and connecting. So how ready do they feel to talk to others about their experiences? I actually had a colleague that I worked with in the past, and she always said that, when we were young, at least here in the US and in our culture, when we're young, we're really told, don't talk to strangers because it's dangerous. And then we get to be in middle school and high school, and we're told, don't brag about yourself because it's not cool. No one's going to like you. And then we get to college, and we're going to be applying for jobs and internships. And we are expected to tell a total stranger how great we are. And so it's not the most comfortable thing. And so it really does take practice. And I know that students, even coming and meeting with a career coach, can seem intimidating. But if they don't come to us first, then maybe their first interview is going to be the interview that really matters. It's going to be for this awesome job, but they've never practiced because they were too intimidated to come in and practice with us. And I know that for me, when I was an undergrad student, I was very shy. I didn't want people to see how inexperienced I was. And so, again, I think trying to normalize this process and know that students do trust you all. And so maybe hearing from you that they can practice with you, or that you have a relationship with someone at the Career Center who would be great for them to chat with about practicing, talking about their experiences. So other ways to prepare and connect. So not only reflecting on their experiences, but really trying to identify what skills they used, what they learned, conducting informational interviews with people who have jobs in the field of their interest. And I know that you all, as staff and faculty and people who work out in the world and who have gone through experiences, you all could be great for students to do informational interviews with. Or if they come to you and they say, I really want to talk to someone who has this as a job because I don't know much about it. Maybe it's helping them identify who to reach out to. And the Career Center can do that as well. So we do have a lot of contacts. We also can, a lot of what we do is not necessarily connecting students with a specific individual, but really teaching them and educating them on how to do that research on their own and going through that with them. because one of the things we're trying to do is not just give students, the answer, but it's showing them how to do this work so that when they, maybe are in a job transition later down the road, yes, they can always come and meet with us. Our alumni get access to the Career Center forever, which is wonderful, but also so that they have these tools on their own. So they know, how to do research on LinkedIn or how to network and chat with people who are in the field. So we're really trying to provide them with tools. And then another phase that they may be in is the searching and applying. So finding the right opportunities can be challenging. Oftentimes I ask students, how they're applying or how they're looking for opportunities, because they come in and they say, gosh, I've applied to so many jobs and I have had zero luck. And then I find out that they're only applying to postings that they're seeing on Indeed. And we know as Career Center professionals that really the majority of opportunities are going to be found through networking. So it's not just, there is the idea of the hidden job market. So if 100% of people are looking and applying for jobs online, but only 20% of the available options are posted and 80% are really kind of going through the back door and networking and getting recommendations, then it's going to be really challenging for students to find opportunities. And so really helping them to identify the resources they're using, maybe helping them figure out what's important in their job search. So where do they want to live? Do they want to stay in Asheville? Do they want to go somewhere else? What's important to them? Have they identified companies they'd like to work for, or do they need help figuring out, okay, they're interested in this field, so what companies exist that we could then look into and see what kinds of opportunities they have? So I want to hear just from some of you all, what conversations are you already having with students? What kind of questions are they coming to you with?
I'll just say that document was really helpful for these conversations. So thank you. Lately, the question I keep hearing is just students trying to find internships in the summer. And I know that's hard. So what's the best advice I can be giving them?
Yeah, and that is challenging. And we did just have our internship event. And so I think also just having students know that these events exist. We also on our website, because a lot of internships are now remote or virtual, we do have information on our website about kind of best practices around remote internships and how to look for those opportunities. And one thing I think is important is I will have students know that they need an internship, and that's a really beneficial experience that they're going to have in college. But then when I ask what type of internship they're looking for, oftentimes they can't really express that. And so I think trying to really gather information from the student, what skills are they hoping to gain? What type of work are they hoping to be exposed to? Are they hoping to work on a particular type of project or just be exposed to a certain industry? And so I think really asking those questions and then having them explore Handshake. So Handshake is a really great way to look for opportunities that are posted specifically for UNC Asheville students and alumni. I really personally love LinkedIn, not necessarily for the connections piece, but for research. So you can look for jobs and internships that are posted in LinkedIn. But one of my favorite ways to use it is actually to go to the UNC Asheville page and click on the alumni tab. And they can see all of our, I think, the latest, I forget the number, but I think the latest was maybe we have 17,000-ish UNCA alumni in LinkedIn. And you can then narrow it down by where they're working, what types of, what was their major. And then you can go to their profiles and see where they've interned in the past or where they work. And so starting to identify then those places where they can look for internship opportunities. And I think another thing too is knowing that not every organization has a structured internship program. And so the Career Center can also help them maybe put together an internship proposal and go to an organization of their interest and say, here are some of the things that I know about you. Here are the things that I know about myself. And these are ways I would love to help your organization flourish, or here is how I could contribute. And so I think sometimes that's helpful as well. It's also challenging, I think timing is a huge thing. And so oftentimes employers start looking maybe later in the fall and then the winter to hire summer interns. And so I do know of some places who have just closed their application process, but it's never too late. I mean, that's a hard thing to say because I think, it's never too early to start looking. But I think really understanding or helping the student understand what they're hoping to gain from an internship, and that can help us with the process of finding them.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware of thinking about an internship proposal, so that's helpful to know.
And of course, the organization has to be willing and open to do that. And it's going to go a lot farther. If the student doesn't ask for pay, they can say, I'm willing to do this for free. But knowing that internships are a wonderful pipeline for employment. And that's why they're so important. So many employers now are taking on interns to help them with projects and, give them this world of work experience and then offering them opportunities for once they graduate. Or even if they don't get an opportunity offered to them, it's really allowing the student to gain those professional networking skills and have new professionals in their network. So.
I spend a lot of time we have one SEF funded student, and we get interns through various departments, most of the history department, but also anthropology and English. And they're people who express an interest in academic librarianship or archives. And I spent a lot of time talking about the profession, talking about graduate school opportunities, talking about the different types of jobs that are there. I would say for most of the people who've come in and work with us, the students develop an interest and want to know what their options are. And we've sent a number off to graduate school, and I often will be writing referrals and references for them. And a lot of them I follow up with. Another thing that's been really good is some students come in, and when they're a little bit older, they're nonlinear. They've worked for a while. They went to community college, stayed out for a while, worked for a while, came back in. And I have a very nonlinear path too. And I've really been able to connect well with students who are in their late 20s, early 30s, who did not go straight through because that was my path. So it's that sort of the one-to-one conversations. There are some students where I've literally spent 12, 15 hours over the course of the semester discussing what their professional opportunities might be as academic librarians.
That is awesome to hear. And I think that's what's so meaningful to our students is the fact that, they have people on this campus who care so much about them and who are willing to spend that time. And I know so many staff and faculty on this campus who go above and beyond, and they spend so much time outside of the classroom, really just having those individual discussions with students. And again, the idea that these questions are coming to people who are not just in the career center. And so I think having as many people on campus as possible, understanding the things that are important for students to know early on. So again, that gaining experience, figuring out what's needed. So as I had mentioned, I think a lot of our students sometimes have these self-esteem issues, and they put these barriers up and they think, oh, well, I probably can't go on and do all these things. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have some students who have these huge goals. And, I was meeting with a student the other day who wants to work for NASA and wants to do something really big for NASA. But this student has never had an internship, has never had relevant experience. And, it sounds like sometimes our students don't understand the importance of gaining that experience and making connections within that field. And so, they may get to their senior year, think that they can apply for, working for Disney, but they've never had a role that has given them that experience. So I think talking to people like you, Jean, that you were saying, is just saying, here are the steps maybe needed. Is this a right step for you, et cetera? So what are some of the tough questions that you all get? Do students come to you with questions about career choice that it's hard to answer? Or you find yourself going, that's a great question. Go to the Career Center. So another question that I have is what type of career development is happening either in your programming? So if you're a staff member and not faculty, are there strategic ways that you're bringing career development content into the programs that you do? And if you are faculty, does your department include these types of topics on a regular basis throughout some of the courses throughout the major?
I guess I'll answer. Well, I guess you're aware of some of the things I've done, Chelsea, right? Like I try to do a career panel every year. Part of that's for me too, because I'm trying to figure out like what skills should we be teaching our students? Like what is the workforce wanting right now? And so that's been really helpful to me too, as well as our students. But I've been struggling with just how to embed some of these steps you're talking about within the curriculum, right? Because as much as I encourage our students to start early, go to the Career Center, most of them are not. I try to push it really hard, and many of them still are not. And so I just feel like to make our students do this, it's good for all of them. How can I embed this within the curriculum? And so I piloted some of these things in like this 1 credit course that we have. It's just not quite the right fit though. And so and especially the math major, there's so many different paths students can take. You know, we do have a small number of required courses, and then they have lots of options. And so just trying to figure out the best way to embed these things within the curriculum, because I think that's what I would love to see down the road. And so if you have any ideas, or if other departments, you know, have things they're doing, it'd be great to hear about some of those, whether it's today or another time.
And that is a great point. And that's something that, you know, I've had conversations with people in various departments about how we can do that. And I think the challenge with our campus is it's almost impossible to require anything. And so, you know, it's a lot of first year seminar courses have the Career Center come in and do work for them. But it's not a requirement. Same thing with embedding career development content into the curriculum. I think certain faculty, like you're very, you know, good at making sure that there's stuff for your students around career development, that they start thinking about it early. But, you know, how can we get the entire department to do that and kind of scaffold different things throughout? So that's something that, you know, in one of my next slides, it's really talking about how can we meet together as, you know, the Career Center and your department to you really figure out kind of a strategic way to do that, and then get everyone on board. So I think that's a really great point. And then also in the chat here, people having questions about viability of different jobs and how likely it is that someone could get a job in that field. So I think that's a really tough question too. And that's where I think understanding what employers are looking for. Are certain careers hiring more now? So is it kind of a bright outlook, or are certain industries hiring less? Is it because we are developing new machinery, or is it because of COVID? People now recognize we can do things a little bit differently. So I think those are very common questions that can be hard to answer. And I certainly am no expert, and I'm more on the career development side of the house. And then David Earnhardt, who is our Associate Director for Employer Relations, his main constituent is really talking to those employers and hearing what they're looking for, what employers are telling him are important when they're looking to candidates, how hiring is going. So I think one thing that we know as the Career Center is that we may not be experts, but we're really willing to try and do research with the student and kind of go with them through that process of figuring out, okay, if this is something you're interested in, what are the steps you need to get there? And then Jean saying, also have those questions about librarianship as a career. Can they get a job? What will it pay? One resource that I really like to share with students, and I can put that in the chat, is ONET, and it's onetonline.org. And this is, you know, it's a good resource. It does have its limitations. There is information on a little over 900 careers. And so students can see what level of education they would need in order to pursue a certain career, certain tasks that they would be required to do on a daily basis, what the average pay is, and then if they're interested in working in a certain state, what is that pay? Another way to find this information is bls.gov. They have an occupational outlook handbook, and I'll put that in the chat as well. And so it's a really good way to do research. But again, I think one of the best ways to figure out the answers to these questions is networking and talking to people within these professions. So there's only certain information that we can glean from research on the web. And so asking people who are in these professions, I think is super helpful.
It's actually, when you say that, I realize that maybe I'm a little bit different than some of the career counseling people in the library, although all of my colleagues in the library will eagerly talk to student workers about librarianship. About 10 years ago, some colleagues of mine and I were wondering why so many people who applied for academic library jobs were making the same mistakes during the interview process. So we did a survey and had 1,000 answers from people who had served on academic library search committees about what behaviors had turned them off and had made them reject candidates.
That's fascinating.
We published it. So it's when a student gets to that point of, well, what do I do on my interview? I can say, well, here's what we learned in this research. And some of them are real eye openers. Some of them are pretty basic, but it was people who were in the field who were responding anonymously going, these were things people did that were not good. So I've gone over that with student after student after student and sent them links to that. And it's been very valuable.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know there is a question in the chat. If you have a link to that information, I would be very interested in that as well.
I will send that.
And, so, and R.L. Kimmels, I'm not sure who you are. I like this question though. Do you recommend students contact professionals in the field themselves also? So yes. So it doesn't always have to be through the Career Center that they can connect. However, Jean just made a really great point, is that oftentimes people think they're ready for the interview. They go in an interview and they don't know what they're doing wrong, but there may be some messaging there or some sort of thing that they're doing that's really turning people off. So I always recommend to students, if you want to reach out to a professional, I think that's great. Go ahead and maybe do a draft of an email you would send and send it to me, and I can, kind of go through that with you and edit. And because I think oftentimes, and I don't know if it's because of Twitter or texting, but a lot of times students don't understand still the need for formal or professional communication. And so I've had students who don't know me reach out and just say, hey, I need this. Can we meet? And, I'm younger. I'm very not super formal, but I think a lot of students still need to know that professionalism exists. And if they're reaching out to someone they don't know, first impressions are huge. And if they don't make a good first impression, maybe that person won't be willing to help. I always say they can, of course, reach out to people on their own, but maybe checking with faculty, staff, Career Center, just to make sure they're giving that first good impression. So I'll ask one more question before we wrap it up here, but what are the most common struggles that you're noticing with your students right now? What are they dealing with that is challenging and maybe preventing them from gaining experience or moving forward in their career development?
So I guess one thing I've noticed is our students work a lot in addition to doing school. But their jobs, like working at the coffee shop, right? They're just trying to make money, pay off some debt. And so, right, it's like, I would love to have that student instead doing research with me, right? Like getting that kind of experience to beef up their resume, but they need to just make money. It's sometimes hard to find internships. So and I don't know how to solve that, right? But and I don't know, part of it is some students are maybe can't get approved for a loan or don't want to take out a loan, afraid of debt, even though you are investing in your education, right? If you can spend that time. So I just struggle with that piece, right? Because sometimes students are spending a lot of time working, not doing as well in their studies, or not able to take some of these other opportunities. So I don't know what the answer is, but as far as things that I see them struggling with, I think that's a big one.
And Becky, that's a great point. And I think that is a very real challenge for a lot of people, and understanding that some people may be paying their way through college. And so it is really hard to take an unpaid opportunity, or maybe they've got a couple of jobs. And so I think I think there's a lot of assumptions that sometimes I make, and I try to catch myself, and I'm like, oh, maybe the student really couldn't take an unpaid opportunity, or they're helping to support their family. And so I think having conversations with students, and sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's they really just don't know the benefit of having relevant experience. Or I've had students say, oh, no, I don't want to have an internship because I've worked at Harris Teeter for so long and I want to show longevity. Whereas, employers don't care how long you've stayed necessarily at a store. Longevity is more, I think, the importance of that is once you get into your career and how long you stay in a role. But if you're a student, I think it's just sometimes they don't understand really what's going to help get them ahead. So again, I think it's just having those conversations, figuring out where it is they are, and is it that they really can't take extra time to do something else? If that's the case, I really think helping them see the little things that they can do. So, volunteering, you don't have to volunteer 40 hours a month or 40 hours a week in order to gain good experience. So maybe there is something that they can do an hour or two per week, or even an hour or two per month, that at least gets them involved and shows employers that they've been intentional about finding opportunities outside the classroom. Another thing I suggest for students, and again, it could be a challenge of finances oftentimes, but I think getting involved in professional associations can be helpful. Sometimes there is a fee there, but there's oftentimes discounted rates for students or recent alumni. And that's where they can also find mentors and look for job opportunities or internship opportunities, research opportunities. So I think one thing that's hard with this whole career development process is there is no one answer for everyone. It's such an individualized, just like teaching, it's such an individualized thing. So a lot of it is really just that education, and then trying to hook them up with whatever is going to be that next best step for them. One thing that I have heard a lot of from people on our campus is that a lot of our students are struggling from mental health issues that are keeping them from really succeeding either in their classes. And thinking of COVID, I mean, that has put a struggle in most people's lives. And so thinking, how can we support our students, not just in the classroom and not just professionally, but help them do what they need to do to take care of themselves first and foremost, make sure that they are safe and healthy and fed before they can make decisions about gaining these excellent opportunities. So I know that we are running out of time. I wanted to let me actually share my screen again, just to show what the Career Center can do for y'all. I just heard some thunder. So I know that you all are having these conversations. And again, I think our students really look up to the staff and faculty on our campus. And I think they are so lucky to be at this institution. So I really encourage you all to continue having those discussions and conversations with them, and letting them know that the Career Center is a great resource too. And so it's not just one or the other, but collaborating. So I would love to have conversations with all of you about how the Career Center can best support the work that you're already doing, and consider ways that we can come into your classroom or come into your workshops and programming. But there are these classroom presentations that we do, and we always do custom workshops as well. So if you're in a class and there's a particular theme or topic, and you would like us to come and do a presentation that really fits with your class, go ahead and just email me and we can have that discussion and plan that. I would love it if you all start thinking, I know that planning ahead is sometimes challenging when, of course, we're in the midst of the semester right now, but even for maybe summer courses, thinking of having the Career Center come and collaborate with you or do a presentation in your classroom, or thinking while you are creating your curriculum and syllabi for fall semester, inviting us as well to come in and do a presentation. We do also have a list of career-related readings and assignments that can be embedded into your class for credit. And so if you don't want the Career Center to come in and take an entire class period, or maybe in addition to that, if you want us to provide you with career-related readings or assignments, we do have that. I was just going to give an example of the health and wellness department. Dr. Rote has, for the last couple of semesters, had her students do an informational interview assignment, and they have to meet with the Career Center so that we can help them and kind of teach them how to reach out to people and network, and then how to prepare questions for an informational interview. And then I would just really love to meet with you or your department. I do a lot of meetings with at faculty department meetings to really talk about ways that we can help support the work that you're doing, how we can help you maybe with some of those tough questions that come your way. Or, you know, Becky, one of the specific questions that you had was, my students are wanting internships. How can we really support them in that? And so we can have those conversations together. So again, this career conversations document was sent out to everyone on campus back on January 14th. But if you can't find it, or you want me to send it to your email, just so it's at the top of your box, let me know. I am going to go ahead and type in my email address here in the chat so you can reach out to me with specific questions. But thank you so much. I'll let you all go. I know we have 1 minute left, and I know schedules are tight, but are there any questions I can answer at the end here?
Actually, I have a question. Can we log into Handshake? I mean, I see it in one port and I see the student sign in. How do I do it as a faculty?
So that is a good question. You should be able to, I think that's now how everyone can sign in. So you should be able to do that with your email address and password. If it doesn't work, I would suggest contacting David, because he may have a different way for y'all to do that. But we just changed that. So it should be a sign on where everyone could do that there.
Oh, you did? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, feel free to email me if you have questions or would like to set up a meeting so we can talk about ways to collaborate with your department.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, everybody, for coming.